Hey there, good people, it's the Crippled Critic, and this week I'm going to be talking about Gravity Rush. Now, Gravity Rush was a game originally on the PlayStation Vita in 2013, but was recently ported to the PlayStation 4 this year, and that's the version I'm reviewing. The game's standout mechanic is the ability to manipulate gravity and make whatever you land on, including a building or even a creature, the floor temporarily. Gravity Rush was directed and written by Japanese designer Keiichiro Toyama, who was originally known for working on horror games like the original Silent Hill and his own series Siren. Though this time around, Keiichiro took a risk and strayed from his normal horror genre and instead went for a more action-adventure game with a hint of open world. In my opinion, the risk paid off. Now on to the controls. Unfortunately, there aren't a whole lot of options you can change. There's the normal camera sensitivity and changing the camera perspective to vertical or horizontal. No way to change the brightness, however. There is a way to lower your volume, and that's about it. There are automatic subtitles, however, and as far as I can tell, no word is spoken without there being subtitles with it. There's also no difficulty levels you can change, but in my experience, I would say most casual players probably shouldn't have too much of a hard time. The game does have a nice camera feature that follows your forward movements, but this doesn't work when you're floating in midair. The button commands aren't too complicated. X is jump and square is your basic attack, while triangle is your special move. Circle is something called stasis, which puts you in the air and also allows other objects near you to float. Once in the air, R1 is used to stop your forward motion once you move in a certain direction. The L2 and R2 buttons can be used to help do a special move if pressed simultaneously. The left analog stick lets you move while the right analog stick aims, which becomes a lot more important once you're floating in the air. Disabled gamers with fine motor skill impairments could have some trouble with this game, but your mileage may vary. Like I said, the game was originally on the PlayStation Vita and it used motion controls for the gravity mechanics. Because of that, I kind of assumed that the gameplay would be kind of clunky because it had to accommodate for the PlayStation 4 port. But I also heard that the decision to make the game on PlayStation Vita was actually made late in development, and I think that was actually a good thing in the end. I mention that because when the game was ported to the PlayStation 4, they added a sliding scale for the motion controls, and that means that you don't actually have to use it, which is great, and I didn't. So yeah, for disabled gamers, you do not have to use motion controls if you don't want to. If you're feeling overwhelmed by any of the moves or buttons, don't worry, this being a Japanese game, it has a lot of tutorials. If you ever need to look at any of the moves, you can find them in the options menu, and it really handholds you through the whole process. And I know I said there aren't that many options for the controls, but one really cool thing I found is that the game has several different ways you can do the same action. For example, the R1 button acts as an anchor when you're in the air, but it can also propel you in the air if you're on the ground. The circle button can propel you in the air too. Another example I'll use is that sometimes there's a special move that requires you to hold both the L2 and R2 button, which I'm not too good at. But what I loved about the game is that it never actually forced me to do this. It let me choose how I wanted to fight and play. There are several workarounds you can do if you aren't happy with the way you're fighting or the way the game tells you to, and I really think that's great. Here's a method for disabled gamers that I used that really helped simplify battles for me. And I really think if you have trouble, definitely try this. There's a special move called the Spiraling Claw. You press triangle and it automatically kind of shoots you at the closest enemy and takes out a lot of damage. And this, if you're having trouble aiming the camera, this move simplifies it so much. And throughout the game you can upgrade this move, and I definitely recommend it because once you do, it makes fighting really simple. The aiming while in midair could cause some trouble for certain disabled gamers. There's always the option to go into the PlayStation 4 customizable controls and maybe swap the control sticks. That might help, but I personally didn't have to do that. So disabled gamers with hearing impairments shouldn't have any trouble at all. I think the spoken language is French, but like I said, subtitles are prevalent throughout, and there's never a moment where a noise off screen affects anything going on in the game, so it should be fine. As for disabled gamers with visual impairments, that's a little more tricky. Like I said earlier, there's no way to change the brightness, and levels are lit very differently depending on where you are. Colorblind players should note that enemies have a weak spot that's a bright reddish color. They shouldn't have too much trouble because enemies are always much darker than their weak spot. Where I think colorblind players will have the most problem is in the health and gravity items. Health gems are green and gravity gems are blue, which I know could cause trouble for colorblind players figuring out the difference between the two. What I would recommend is to focus more on their specific shapes. The green health gems are slender and rectangular shaped, while the blue gravity gems are square and wider. They're honestly never too close to each other in my opinion, but fair warning. So the gameplay in Gravity Rush definitely sets it apart from most games out there, and I can definitely see that on the surface some players might think it's really intimidating, just the gravity shifting abilities, but I promise once you get the hang of it, it's really simple. Other than defeating enemies and bosses, you're mostly collecting gems to upgrade your next move. The game can definitely feel like a platformer at times, but you'd be surprised how many times it feels like a Zelda game or Shadow of the Colossus. The gravity manipulation fits so well with the open world setting. This game is so much fun. I can't say that enough. I mean, you can fly anywhere. You can walk a lot of places too, but why would you want to? You can fly. Add to the fact that there's no falling damage, and it just makes the gameplay less stressful and makes you feel more powerful. Even levels that kind of amount to just collecting gems down one pathway are made really exciting because of the fast-paced mechanics, all while giving you the option of keeping it at your own pace if you want. Other than a little bit of filler at the end of the game, it was really a joy to play, honestly. The story of Gravity Rush is pretty unique, but kind of out there. You play as a girl named Kat, who finds herself on the floating city of Hexville. She then runs into a mysterious black cat named Dusty that gives her the power to control gravity. Kat decides to help protect the people from these strange monsters called the Nevi, and she also must unlock the secrets of the world. Though I originally said the director worked on horror games, you wouldn't know it from this game. The tone is light and whimsical and never really takes itself too seriously. Also, the culture and race of a lot of the characters was intentionally made ambiguous. The spoken language is French, and although the overall look is sort of anime inspired, with the jazzy upbeat music, I would say things feel more like they're coming out of a 1930s cartoon in America. Something kind of cool is that the game sometimes feels like it's something out of a Miyazaki film, with its bustling towns and magical characters. Near the end of the game, there's even a theme about humanity's relationship with nature and technology, which is a recurring theme in Miyazaki films. Within a few hours of the game, however, you definitely see Keiichiro's influence. The environments and creatures, as well as the story, start to become a lot more surreal and abstract, completely changing your expectations, but in a good way. The world's become increasingly bizarre, and the creatures, in my opinion, get kind of disturbing in a way that only Keiichiro Toyama can dream up. So perfect for my taste. The game even starts asking complicated philosophical questions about the world, like who created it and are we in someone's dream? Sadly, none of these questions ever really get answered in the end, but maybe that's for the best. It looks great though. The cel-shaded graphics make everything pop, and honestly I didn't see any glitches. Gravity Rush is a great game, and I would say that even though there aren't many control options, the gameplay is simple enough that I think disabled gamers shouldn't have too hard of a time. But yeah, I definitely recommend this game. It's got a really great look, the story is strange, but it's so much fun to play. And you know, in this day and age when so many games care more about whether a story is good or whether the visuals pop, more so than whether the game is actually fun, Gravity Rush really is just a breath of fresh air. I haven't had this much fun playing a game in a long time. There's a bunch of side missions that I haven't finished, and I'm definitely going to go back and play them. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.